Hello and welcome to the Car Automotive Review channel, and welcome to the 2025 Nissan Frontier. And in today's video, we're going to do a proper technical review under the hood, under the truck, inside and out, to see some things we like, some things we do not like about the Nissan Frontier. Let's start our technical review under the hood. Now, the Frontier only has one engine option, which is a 3.8-liter V6 VQ38DD. This engine is pretty interesting. Let's dive into it. So, mechanical construction at the top, you do have a plastic valve covers on both sides with the high-pressure fuel pump sitting on the driver's side or the left side. This does have a single-piece cylinder head with dual overhead cam. It does have caps. There's normal caps for the cams, nothing in the valve cover or something strange. No, very basic. This does have buckets. So it doesn't have hydraulic lifters, doesn't have anything. It does have manual valve clearance adjustment. You just remove the bucket, measure the thickness, get a thicker or smaller bucket, and that's how you adjust the valve. So it does have manual valve clearance. A little bit on the old school side there. Some folks will say that's a good thing, and it is. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. This engine does have dual variable valve timing, both on the intake and the exhaust. The intake one is electronic, so you have a little motor in the middle of the gear, has two gears that are splined into each other. If that motor speeds up faster than the cam speed, it's going to advance the timing. If it spins slower, it's going to retard the timing. If they spin at the same time, they are base timing. In the exhaust side, though, it is hydraulically controlled variable valve timing. Now, this engine does have 4 timing chains. One is the main one that goes from one of the cams to the crank, and then between each cam, the intake and exhaust, you have a little chain that connects the 2 gears, and then at the very bottom, you have another chain for the oil pump. Now, the main chain and the other 2 chains, they do have hydraulic tensioners. The little chain has a little spring-loaded tensioner. That's a pretty typical design for V6s. Now, the block in this engine is also aluminum. It does have kind of the main caps are integrated into one unit that sits in, and then there's an upper oil pan and a tiny little lower oil pan. We'll look at those when we look underneath it. The upper oil pan is aluminum. The lower oil pan is actually steel, which is cool. This engine does have an oil cooler, which is nice. It's right there, right behind the oil filter. Now, let's dive into the fuel system here. This only has direct injection, not port and direct or just port. So you have the high pressure fuel pump on the driver's side. You do have the direct injectors underneath the intake manifold, which is a good spot for them. Having only direct injection, you could build carbon in certain driving conditions. However, Nissan, and they have this engine in other iterations and other sizes, but a similar technology with the direct injection. They don't seem to have chronic issues, so that is a good thing. But under certain driving conditions, you may develop carbon buildup, but is it going to be high enough to cause issues? Evidence doesn't suggest that, but time will tell, and I hope that is not the case. Now, the cooling system on this engine. And this is where we got a big problem coming up. This has a very basic cooling system. You have a thermostat, you have a water pump, no fancy valves, nothing. Except, where's my water pump, Nissan? I've tried to look for it, but it's a little absent. This, ladies and gentlemen, has a chain-driven water pump. That means if your water pump goes out on this engine, it's a massive surgery, because you have to pull the whole front of the engine front cover and everything. That's the first problem. Second problem, which I think is the biggest one, if the water pump decides to leak, depending how it leaks and how bad it leaks, they do have a little weep hole that is programmed into it, so it will leak external. But in most cases, in reality, with the engines that have this style, they'll leak inside, and you'll think you have a blown head gasket, because the coolant will just go straight into the oil. That's a problem. Why is that what I don't understand? I mean, there is a massive space in front of this engine. Why couldn't we put an electric water pump? Why can't we just build it into the front cover? I couldn't tell you why. The worst idea in the planet. I mean, this engine we started this review. I was so impressed by this engine, every level, except that. That's a very bad idea. Now this, unlike many show-off trucks, doesn't have a mechanical fan. It just has an electric one, because I actually like it better. It's quieter, smoother, works more on demand as needed. I don't have complaints about that. Now, the transmission in the Frontier here is a very interesting one. It's a 9-speed automatic transmission torque converter, nothing really special there. But the manufacturer of that transmission is kind of, It is a 9G transmission from Mercedes-Benz, except it's made by Jatco. So here's the mysterious part that I could never get a straight answer for. Is this a Mercedes transmission, flat out, and Jatco just stamped their stamp on it? Or is this a transmission that Mercedes gave them the blueprints for it and Jatco built it? Or does Mercedes have a Jatco transmission? Unknown. Pretty smooth transmission, super smooth transmission. One thing about Mercedes is maybe they don't make the most reliable stuff in the world, but they do know how to make a smooth transmission. Love this transmission. You don't even feel the shifts. Super smooth. Reliability, on the other hand, I would say about average. It's not nowhere near as problematic as some Jatco CVT transmissions. This is not a CVT, but at the same time, expensive is the word I think of. Mercedes transmissions are not cheap. Moving away from that, let's talk about a few interesting observations here. This has hydraulic power steering. And unlike some Nissans toward the end there when they were slowly getting away from hydraulic power steering, this is a normal belt-driven power steering pump, not some hydroelectric pump or something strange like that. Just normal. Downside of that is leaks. Nissan are kind of known for their power steering leaks, so this does have that. I wish it had electric. That would have been really nice, or just completely electric, not hydroelectric. That would have been really nice. The other thing is, everything I see here, I like, except that water pump. Don't really like that. The quality here is refreshing. I mean, I truly have to say, this is well made. There's no other way to say it. I love that the minimal use of plastic stuff for coolant. There's only one place, and it's very tiny. It's right there, super accessible, and I like that. There is this beautiful coolant pipe, steel, goes all the way to the back and the side. That could have been any other truck in 25 would have had that giant piece of plastic. That's steel. The only thing that, this is a small nitpick, just for them DIY warriors out there. If you want to do spark plugs on this engine, the driver's side, which is usually in every truck I've worked on, the driver's side is usually busy. The driver's side is very accessible. The passenger side, the plenum runs over it and you have to remove it. Not a hard plenum to remove in their defense, but some trucks found a way with their V6 to route it in a way where you can still access them. Not this one. That's the only thing about it, but love the quality of everything here because it just doesn't feel like this was a 2025 design. This is an older design, and of course by the buckets and everything you can tell. The only problem I have with this engine is the water pump being where it is. The other small nitpick, it is not as smooth. Some folks have mentioned that they're very smooth. They're not. So you stop in a traffic light, it's going to vibrate the truck. And the start stop, of course this has start stop, doesn't make it any better. Let's put it this way. Let's take a look underneath the 2025 Nissan Frontier. And you do have a small metal shield here. Now this is an SL trim. This is not the Pro 4X or anything. They do, the oil filter's right here, and they do give you a little access door to it. Now the only thing is, it only covers the front, and we're noticing this in a lot of trucks. It's just not Nissan. They don't cover the rest. That would be nice if they cover the rest. Now this, unlike some trucks, does have hooks, which are really nice. With that, let's take a look at the front suspension here. So very old school front suspension, which is actually a good thing. Steel knuckle, not some aluminum flimsy thing. Steel knuckle, actually it's a really nice piece of steel. Steel lower control arm with a ball joint built into it, and steel upper control arm also with the ball joint built into it. The upper control arm is a little bit on the thin side. That's the one observation about it. Front brakes, 2-piston caliper. They are floating calipers. They're actually a little bit on the smaller side, but I hope they work. One thing about this is I don't exactly like the quality of the camber bolts here, and I wonder if they're even camber bolts, because I don't think they are. I think they just want you to kind of change the washer or grind it or something. It's kind of interesting to see that. But everything in the front looks decent. I like the axles. They are half painted, so the shaft is painted, but the end is not. And that's what they did here. Differential in the front, it's an aluminum housing. This is something we're seeing a lot of manufacturers switch to. No longer you'll see cast iron. If you look around here, rack and pinion is right here. This is, of course, a hydraulic rack and pinion, not a electric one or anything. We do have a bushing here that looks like it's separate, but they have two other bushings that are built into the rack. Actually, I like this because usually these bushings on cars, eventually they wear out and you start having movement in the rack. This one has two, so I hope that increases its chances of not moving. Oil pan is small. This is typical, so it fit between the frame and the front differential. Very small oil pan. It is steel, which I really like that part. Now, we get to the transmission, which is a large mystery to me. Looking at this is a Mercedes 9G transmission, but it is made by Jatco. Not the transmission, not the Mercedes one, but the Nissan one is. So there's a lot of theories about this, about what's going on here. Because of the Mercedes X-Class, if you're in the US, you've never heard of it. It's actually a Frontier, by the way. I feel like they gave them the kind of the blueprint of this transmission, and they built it because it doesn't have markings of Mercedes, actually Jatco, but it is a 9G transmission. It's actually a good 9-speed transmission. Did have a recall at some point, but things are good. It's a good transmission. Transfer case is right here. Of course, this is 4-wheel drive, front drive shaft. I wish it was painted. It is not. It is just already rusting away. Not the end of the world, but I wish it was. And then I'm looking at this motor. This is what engages it. It looks like this motor comes out without having to assemble the entire thing, which is nice. The drain plug and the fill plug. I don't know why manufacturers use this style. Just use one with a gasket. Why do we have to be plumbers and put this putty on it and all this stuff? I don't know why we need to do that. A lot of manufacturers are doing that, not just Nissan. Then the exhaust. Up to this point, this is a catalytic converter. Love the exhaust, very high quality, although the shielding is a little interesting, but everything good. Here onwards, I don't know what happened here. You know what this looks like to me? This looks like a kind of a plug. That's what it looks like. And I don't even understand why is it there to begin with. I mean, it connects right here. Why do we have a cut here in this little clamp that totally looks out of place? Maybe it makes assembly simpler. But then 90-degree turn and another 90-degree turn. A little obstructive. I mean, this is wide open. I don't know why we couldn't just come across or something. They must have a reason. This is a body and frame truck, of course. I like that this is a fully boxed frame. This is usually the better kind. Now, none of the openings are covered and everything is kind of wide open. You have openings here, all over. I wish that was a little bit better covered. Now, this is an interesting thing. I like that the drive shaft actually sits on top, not mounted up. This actually puts less load on this bearing right here. It's not hanging like that. I like this design. This is a pretty cool design here. Fuel tank's right here. It doesn't look like a pretty big fuel tank, but it is a decent size. Then we come to the back. You don't have U-joints in the back. You have actually a CV joint. It's interesting to see. Works. And there's no issues with it. Now, the rear differential, it looks like a domestic truck. And for our international viewers, it looks like an American-made truck rear end because the differential is housed in the housing and you just have a cover. Japanese trucks usually will have a carrier that comes out, not this style. But the good thing about this one is usually this style will only have a drain plug and no fill. This one has a fill plug and a drain plug, which is pretty cool. Now in the back here, I love how things are wide open. Here isn't tiny, everything is cramped and everything. No, things are wide open. We really like that. Now you do have leaf springs in this truck, which are pretty cool. There are 4 leaves, which is more than sufficient for a truck of this size, although some in this segment will have 6. This one has 4, but 4 is better than 2, for example, because we've also seen that. Shocks in the back. Shocks, actually, even the fronts, they're made by Sachs. That's the company that originally made them for Nissan. You do have a rear sway bar, which is nice. Spare tire, of course, is a truck. Spare tire is right here. I like how the tow hitch is detachable from the frame. You see it's mounted right here. Should you get in an accident and it bends that, you just undo it from the frame and replace it. That is we've seen some trucks that it is part of the frame. Now, we skipped it a little bit, the rear brakes. They are disc brakes on this. You know, there's a little bit on the old school side. They are disc brakes, single piston caliper, pretty small brakes, not drum brakes. And you do have the parking brake in the rotor hat. You see the cable going right here. So this is a mechanical parking brake. Overall, I actually like everything I see here, except for a few things. Exhaust, usually Nissan, historically, their exhausts not long lasting. But I love the simplicity here. I mean, look at the charcoal canister. Just sitting right here. Now, if they would have turned it a little bit away from debris and whatnot, it would have been nicer. But again, if you need to do anything here, everything is open. You don't have to pull half the car apart to access the charcoal canister, which is nice. Let's take a look at the outside of the 25 Frontier. Now, in 25, they do have a slight update to the front, kind of a revision. You really have to look under a microscope to see it, but something about the Frontier, and this has always been the case, although they took their time to update the last one. This doesn't have a gimmicky look. I mean, you look at all the new trucks, they're all trying to look like this overlander, off-roader truck, all the different angles. This one just looks like a truck. Nothing, no drama. And I like that. It's not the best looking truck in the planet, but again, you bought a truck for its function, not for its looks. It's nice to look nice, and it's decent looking. So I like the new Nissan logo. This is really like the colors and how it blends in with everything. Now the radar sensor for the adaptive cruise control is all the way down here. Wish it was behind the emblem. That would have been a better place for it, but must have a reason for it. Now the fit and finish on the outside, this is the only part that the Frontier manages to join the rest of the trucks. I mean, just look at this gap, this giant hood gap here. I don't know what's going on there, and the paint quality could be better. Let's put it this way. Not bad, but could be better for what I want to say the price these things commend, but this one not too bad. Moving away from that to the best thing about this, it's not as big as an F-150. There's a slight dip here, and this dip makes a big difference. Gives you better visibility this way. I mean, this is not as big as a F-150, but still, a little bit like that helps. Now, this does have intelligent key only in the front, understandably so, but it is a button. Certain scenarios, and this is something I'll have to admit, I usually take that as a bad thing, doesn't have a touch sensor, but in certain scenarios, like if you have all kinds of snow here, I like me a button. So there's good and bad to everything. But what is bad is, well, again, following I guess this is becoming a fashion with the trucks, the quality of things. The things that don't matter, but they should matter, because this is the stuff you see. I mean, this seal, it is almost coming off. I mean, this one, look at it from this angle, it's almost like it's about to come off. I hope it doesn't, but that's one part where the Frontier follows the fashion of new trucks. The body on the side is a quintessential truck look. There isn't drama, there isn't much going on. I love how it looks, and there is no over-the-top design on the side, and I like that. Then we come here, and this is where I have a slight thing with this. If you look all the way down here, they don't have a fender liner in the front. You just see a little metal rod that holds the fender, or the body side panel on the side, and that's it. I wish they would have covered that up. In the back they did, but in the front they didn't. Then we come to the bed. When it comes to trucks, if you're going to use them as a truck, the simpler, the better. This is a mechanical handle. Soft, open tailgate, which is cool. But it's a mechanical handle with a mechanical lock. There doesn't need to be more complicated thing than that. Now, yes, it would be nice if you have an option to lock it with the rest of the doors. You don't have to use a key, which actually they supply you with an additional key with it. But again, I can live with that. Mechanical handle, what can go wrong? Battery dies, whatever happens, it's a mechanical handle. And the bed, this is a nice size bed. They do have multiple configurations of bed sizes, which is nice. I like that they have a power outlet here. That is a nice touch in this segment. Once I find it, right here. Overall, I mean, it's almost coming to a point where all trucks look the same, because it's a truck, how can you make it look different? But this one is on the kind of subtle, not over the top. They do have Frontier written here, stamped in the body. They do have a Nissan logo, which looks really nice. But I really like how this truck looks. You do have a tow hitch here with your trailer connections here built into the bumper. I like this truck because it's focused. It's not meant to wow nobody, but it works. It's a functional shape, and I really like that. Let's take a look at the interior of the Nissan Frontier. And I gotta say one thing, you know, trucks are getting so expensive at 25, they're getting so gimmicky, and at the same time, they're getting super cheap feeling on the inside. This, on the other hand, it's nothing exotic materials and over-the-top design and everything, but it feels solid. I mean, this is the perfect attempt at making a plastic interior feel solid, and it works. And they did this beautifully. I love it. This is what a truck interior should look like or feel like. Everything is solid. It's all plastic, but it just doesn't feel cheap and flimsy. That's the best part. And the better part of that is it's gimmick free. I love that part. I mean, you look at the gauges. There's just 2 dials. This is a high trim. 2 dials and a little screen in the middle. Does exactly the same as a giant screen. The entire gauge screen. Does everything exactly the same. Auxiliary gauges and everything. Same thing. And then you look in the middle here. There isn't 17 million buttons. There is a mechanical shifter, which I love. There is physical control for your HVAC. All your heated seats and heated steering wheel. Everything is physical button. I love that. And the 4x4 switch here, all of them feel super flimsy. This one feels very nice. It's still a switch, but it just feels nice. Not over the top, but it feels nice. I like that. They do write Frontier here, which I feel a bit excessive, but even that is actually a really nice font, a really nice, solid feeling piece. Now in 25, they do have a few revisions to the interior. The infotainment is the biggest one. I really like this infotainment. I mean, it is a big screen, yes, which makes this truck gimmick-free and doesn't lack in technology. It's not some old dinosaur. No, this is a nice infotainment screen, decent size, works pretty good. A little bit glitchy here and there, but has wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, which I really like that. Now, here's how it feels to drive this truck. It has 2 opposing characteristics. You know, you drive it over bumps, it is bumpy and jumpy. Just what you expect a truck this size with rear leaf springs. It's not as refined as a truck with rear coil springs, but you expect that out of a leaf spring. You know, they're durable, there isn't much to them, so it is jumpy. But at the same time, it is surprising how quiet it is. I mean, almost to a point where it is a lot better than anything we've driven. I think the Ranger was the only one that came close, but this is a very quiet interior. And I really admire that. That is really nice. There's a nice touch in the truck. Now, there are a few concerns that I have with this interior, which we're going to address. The steering wheel. Love the controls and everything. It is on the heavy side, especially when you're stopped. Now, some folks will say, oh, it's a truck. It needs to be like that. No, it doesn't. This is a little excessive. I have arthritis in my arm. Driving this for a while, especially at low speeds and traffic and whatnot, it's not fun. Let's put it this way. I don't know why it's this heavy. I understand it's hydraulic and all that, but it's too heavy. That's the first thing. And the second two things, super nitpicks. The lock-unlock button on the door, only the lock is lit, not the unlock. I guess they wanted to save a couple cents. Same thing with the power windows. Only the driver's is lit. The other ones, not lit. You kind of have to figure out where they are at night. Small stuff, but I mean, we did the lights, might as well do them all. Let's talk about the back seat on the Nissan Frontier. Initially, when you look at this truck, it has decent knee room. I mean, just physically looking at it, feels like it's bigger than other competitors. But here's the problem. This is a super uncomfortable back seat. Look at my the way I am sitting here. You know what the best way to describe it is? Take a little bucket of paint, put it on the ground, and sit. Is that comfortable to sit here for hours and hours? This is exactly how this feels. And the reason for that is the back is so straight to push the seat back in to give you that illusion of a leg room that it's a very uncomfortable seat. But again, in this segment of trucks, you don't expect to have very comfortable back seats, and that's just how it is. However, you do have a household style outlet here. You do have a USB-A, USB-C, so there's some amenities. And then there's one thing I want to mention here. You do have a little nice storage pocket in the back seat, not the driver's one, because whoever sits here is not special enough to get their own storage area. Let's talk about some things I do not like about the 2025 Nissan Frontier. Starting with the engine. All I'm going to say is a chain-driven water pump. The worst idea in the planet. Why? Because otherwise this engine is actually a good engine. That's the only, I feel like the Achilles heel. I just hope they put a good water pump. Although from looking at it, it doesn't look like it. But I hope they put a good water pump here because this is a massive operation to replace a simple water pump. Could have had it external. We would have never had issues. That's the only thing. Second thing is, it's a little bit of a nitpick. V6s are usually very smooth, and you barely feel them run. They're super smooth. This one, at idle, not very smooth. Shakes, not the smoothest operating V6, regardless what anybody says. It does vibrate, and that's the one thing about it. It does have auto start stop, which adds even, it kind of shakes the whole truck to start, and that's auto. Nobody likes auto start stop, but this is the engine. The biggest thing is the chain-driven water pump. It's not a good idea. And apart from that, the power steering system, it is hydraulic, which 2025, most cars are not electric. Some folks will not like it, for they assume it is complicated. It's actually not. But the problem with hydraulic power steering is leaks. That's the first thing. We can live with that. We're not going to hopefully deal with that for a long time. But you are stopped in this truck and you want to turn, the steering wheel is very heavy. I mean, noticeably heavy. I have arthritis in my arms. It was not helping. Let's put it this way. I feel like they can make a tweak and fix this. And I'm putting it in this section so they would, because otherwise it does have a really nice feel because it's power steering, but it's way too heavy at idle. If you have issues with your arms like me, or you are older, you're going to immediately notice it, and it's not pleasant. It's going to tire your arms. Let's put it this way. So, the Nissan Frontier, one of the most requested reviews in our channel at this time. So, the Frontier, at some point, was basically an irrelevant truck hidden in the background. We really considered it, dwindling sales, and that's because they took their sweet time to update it. I mean, it's basically been essentially almost the same since 2004 up to 2021. A few tweaks here and there, but nothing really major. 2022 comes around though, and they updated, and the update, for the most part, was done well. And in 2025, they have a small revision that's done really well. Let's talk about this truck, because this truck, on paper, it looks like the perfect truck to buy in 2025 from every level. However, the more time I spend with this, there are some things that seriously need some work. It's not perfect, but guess what? No truck is perfect in 2025. And here's the bottom line. We have a solid V6. No turbo, no gimmicks, no nothing. Just a proper V6. But that does come with some compromises. Number one is direct injected only. Although there hasn't been history of direct injection carbon buildup problem with this particular engine from Nissan and other iterations, but still, it's possible. The second thing is, which is to me is the biggest thing, the water pump that is driven by the timing chain. That is, let me just reiterate that one more time, a disaster waiting to happen. I wish that was not the case. This would have gotten this engine so high on my list because everything else is proper. That's the only downside of this engine. The other thing is the power steering. It is hydraulic. Now, some folks will say that that is a good thing because you have the proper feel of a hydraulic power steering, and they would be right in a sports car, not in a truck. Here's what that translates to in a truck, and this particular one. Power steering fluid leaks. You still have that, and you will still deal with those. They're inevitable. It's a fluid. It's going to leak at some point. But the worst problem is when you buy this new, the steering wheel is extremely heavy when you're slow. I feel like intentionally heavy. And some folks will really not like that. If you're going to use this every day, you're going to have to grow new arm muscles to handle it. Unnecessarily so, I should say. Not in a good manly truck way. No, it's not good. It's too heavy, bottom line. But with that, there is a lot of good things about this truck that kind of fly under the radar of most. You look at this truck, it's a no gimmicky, no nonsense trying to show off and impress all your non-off-road buddies that it is a serious off-road truck. No, it just looks like a normal truck. You get into the inside, there is no exotic materials or leather and this and that. No, just a solid plastic interior. You know, you can make plastic feel solid because they did it here. And I love it. Simple interior, no gimmicks, almost zero gimmicks. That's the second good thing. And the last and the most important good thing, let's dive into it. The number one competitor for this truck from Japan is the Toyota Tacoma. 5 years ago, the Toyota Tacoma would make this look like we're not even on the same planet. Let's put it this way. But as of late, that's not the case anymore. Let's look at the off-road models. The Toyota Tacoma TRD Pro 2024 starts at $63,000. Became a status truck. Nobody will buy that and go off-roading with it. Let's put it this way. Now this one has the Pro 4X. Now some will jump on the comments and say, well, the Pro 4X is not as serious of an off-road truck as the TRD Pro. And in some cases, they could be right, not entirely though. But let's say that the TRD Pro is more serious and it's better off-road than the Pro 4X. But I can guarantee you one thing, having driven and spent time with the TRD Pro, the new one, it is not $20,000 better because the Pro 4X starts just under $42,000. That's a huge difference. And for that, you get a truck that has no gimmicks, just focused. That's the biggest thing. That's what's going to make this truck finally become successful in the United States, as they were once, a long time ago. Because with this, you're not paying for a premium for a badge, or you're not paying premium for some over-styled mall crawler wannabe off-road thing. No, just an honest-to-God truck. Solid interior, V6 with some imperfect stuff, which is nothing is perfect in life. Doesn't look over-styled. Actually, it's a very nice truck overall. I gotta say that. It's the truth. I think the best thing about this truck, regardless of the solid feel and this and that, the price. This has prices from 5 years ago, but it is not overdone like the new trucks. That's a simple reality here. Let's summarize this. This is not a perfect truck. They really could use some work on that power steering to make it lighter because it's simply unnecessarily heavy. They can't really change the design of the engine of that water pump, but I suppose we can live with that. But here's the bottom line. If you want a social status truck that looks like it's ready to climb Mount Everest, but it can't, and you are ready to pay triple for it, just for the badge and the name and this and that, and have it filled with every single gimmick that you'll never use, but you'll show off to every single buddy that gets in the truck, look elsewhere. If you want a decent, focused truck that has no gimmicks, no drama, doesn't cost a fortune, and overall has a relatively decent recipe with some compromises, nothing is perfect in life, this should be at the top of your list. I think Nissan got one part very right in 2025. Everything else they did well, but the one part that is the most important part, this doesn't cost a fortune when you go into the higher trims. It's almost like at the prices trucks are commanding these days, you will automatically go to a higher trim with this. And this is the first time I'll recommend a higher trim, because for less than $40,000, you can get in a better optioned Frontier, and you don't have gimmicks. You just have nice features that actually folks will use on their daily commute. And the update in 2025 makes it even more appealing. This truck should be on your list, because other trucks, unfortunately, they're becoming flimsy, they're becoming less quality, and more expensive. This one is the opposite of that. Folks, I hope this video was helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. And until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.